So when you hear kind of the word sports psychology or the mental side of being an athlete, the mental side of baseball, what's kind of the first thing that really pops into your head?
I think for me initially in baseball, when I heard just the term psychology, I thought it was something for people that were going through dark days. I thought it was something. It was kind of there was a stigma around it that if you were working on your psychology, there must be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And then kind of as I learned more about it, you learn that it's a very vital tool, not just in sports but in everyday life. And I think over the last 10 years, I think you've seen it come full circle just in society in general, and how crucial mental health is and the benefits of working on it on a day-to-day basis. And so sports psychology, I think it helped me. It extended my career, just how I approach the game, how I approach kind of my routine on a daily basis, and how crucial it is, in order to have that, to not only stay sane, but to have success and be able to withstand, failure that's, going to happen no matter what we do.
You mentioned they're extending your career, so I got to imagine that you got a couple things in mind where in the mental side of the game you might have been struggling with at one point in your career, and now through education or mental coaching, whatever it may be, you kind of feel that you progress in those areas.
Yeah, I think early on in pro ball, I think it's easy to kind of want to get to the next step, the next level. And when you are constantly focusing on that, you fail to kind of embrace where you are, and kind of live in that process that's so crucial, to have success. And so when you're constantly looking forward, you're, you are limiting yourself in the present as far as, doing what you need to do in order to maintain your goals. So, if you do, it's good to have goals, but you have to have a process in place that's going to help you reach them, rather than, you know, having stuff set ahead, but not understanding how best to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think early on in pro ball, I wanted to get to the next level. I wanted to get to big leagues, but I didn't understand for myself how I needed to get there, and what kind of process not only would get me there, but keep me there, and let me have success. It was one of those things. I think I was so set on getting there, whereas I didn't understand, because once you get there, okay, now you've done that. What's next? And it's like, oh shoot, well, what do I do to make sure I can stay there and contribute? And so during that learning process, I learned, sort of what that process looked for me, and how best to um, kind of maximize my potential.
For sure. I think that's a really good point to show the importance of your mindset of being process focused versus outcome focused, because I always love talking about that, because the process is the one thing that you can control. You can control your process. You can't necessarily control the outcome. You might be doing the things day to day and might not get the call up as quickly as you may have wanted to, but all you can control is what you do yourself. And I think for a lot of athletes, especially younger athletes out there, because they might put such an emphasis on reaching that next level or hitting that home run or pitching that complete game, that those are nice, but that's not the true indication of the success of you as an athlete. I think it's really the process, the behind the scenes work, that really determines how far or how long you can stay playing sports professionally.
For sure. And I think, especially in baseball, comparison can be poison if you don't know how to best use it. And so, there's a time where you compare yourself to another player, and, somebody might, get promoted where you think you deserved it. And so rather than using it as motivation, if you don't know how to properly, um, handle that, it can be a detriment. Whereas, based on the process of how you, digest information, or the way you use your mind, you could use it as motivation. And so I think, it's easy to compare yourself to players that are in similar positions in baseball. And I think the big thing for me, like you said, the process is easy to control, whereas the outcome is not. And I think, there were a couple times where, I deserved to probably get called up just like other people that were getting called up. And so coming to that realization, and basically I kept telling myself, just control what you can control. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But if you've done what um, that you believe gets you in the best position, that will take care of itself. You can't worry about, you know, things that are out of your control. And so that was a big thing for me in AAA, being there for, 2.5 years, finally just saying, hey, the decisions are out of my control, but how I approach my daily business, how I play the game, that's within my control. And if it's not good enough for this team, maybe it'll be good enough for another team. And so I think that helped me kind of take pressure off myself and feel like, I needed to do something in order to validate the years that I've been playing. And so, I think, being able to control things when there's so many variables out of our control is crucial for the process that we go through.
I'm I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, and kind of hearing your story there and how you may have been anticipating call-ups to the big leagues but not getting them. I got to imagine now, kind of looking back at it retrospectively, it was a good thing. You might have learned a couple of key lessons staying just that bit longer. It might just giving you the right amount of tools to have the success you've had so far.
Absolutely. And that's what I would tell myself too when it didn't happen. It's like you said, I'm a believer in things happen for a reason, and there's other things in place that are working in your favor. And I remember there was a point where I was playing well, and it was after a game, and I knew that there was a chance of I could get called up if I was the guy. And I remember having like an overwhelming sort of anxiety around the fact that, well, I could get called up to the big leagues. And I had kind of anxiety, like, well, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Whereas, like, hold on, you've been trying to get there, you're on the cusp, and now you're having some level of doubt that you're not ready. And I didn't end up getting called up. And so it's like you said, it's one of those things. It's like I needed to go through that in order to recognize, like, what about my game or my mentality isn't ready to contribute at the big leagues or play in the big leagues. And so going through that, I was able to kind of have that learning experience, or that basically wake up moment of like, hey, there's something in your process that you need to focus on. Let's start, living our daily life like you're in the big leagues while you're in the minor leagues. So when that transition comes, you've already lived it out. You've already prepared for it mentally, to where it's just another another game in a different stadium. And so, like you said, I wouldn't change my path for anything, because I think I had to go through a lot of maturation in the minor leagues in order to get myself to a point where I could feel comfortable in the big leagues. And had I gone up too early, and you've seen it with other guys, or I've seen it, that it can just overwhelm you and it's hard to recover from. So
Right.
in that regard, I'm certainly thankful for, all the lessons I was able to learn on the journey.
That maturation and adversity, I guess, process that athletes inevitably have to go through. I think for a lot of younger athletes, they try and delay that as much as possible, because it's obviously not fun to go through adversity. It's not fun to put yourselves in a situation where you challenge yourselves and grow from a mental perspective, because at least with a lot of the younger athletes that I've kind of consulted with or coached with on the side, they always kind of look for the easy way out, or they just play to their strengths. They don't go and try and attack their weakness. But kind of like how you were alluding to there, and I've listened to in some of your previous interviews, it's going through that adversity. That's like, you can't make it to where you are today without going through that adversity process. So for somebody out there, whether it's starting small or having somebody there to just be a guide or to hold your hand, whatever it may be, I think taking that first step as an athlete to embrace adversity is probably the hardest step to take, but the most significant in terms of development.
Yeah, and I think especially, you know, you, results is what everyone hangs their hat on. And so, you can see where it'd be easy to focus on results, because at the end of the day, you can be obsessed with the process, but if you don't have results, you can't stick around. But, having said that, I think the process uh, creates opportunity to have sustainable results, um, because adversity is inevitable. You know, even if, say, it's not even in the sport you're playing, but it might be off the field, and you're trying to deal with adversity off the field. when you're trying to play a game, and if you're not equipped mentally to handle it, some level of that process or performance is going to falter. And so, you see in baseball where organizations, they're almost hopeful to see, some of their young prospects or their players go through adversity before they get to the big leagues, because in the big leagues, there's going to be adversity. The best players, in the world experience adversity, and they're the best equipped at handling it. And so they want to see guys in the minor leagues go through tough times, go through adversity to see how they're able to handle it, how they're able to learn from it, so that when they go through it again, they're comfortable with it. Whereas, like, if you've never experienced adversity in the minor leagues, and the first time is in the big leagues on the biggest stage where you're going to get a microphone in your face after the game, it can be overwhelming and break guys. And so, as crazy as it sounds, like, you have to almost experience adversity to understand, um, how to go through it, how to maintain it, and how to learn from it in order to be successful for a long period of time. Because um, yeah, I think nowadays more so than ever, the easy route is, um, obviously the more popular, because, like you said, who wants to go through struggles? And I think until you learn how much growth comes from that, you're going to try and avoid it. But once you go through it and you understand how much stronger mentally, it makes you, you're not going to search it out, but when it does come, if you can see it as more of an opportunity to learn from it versus, like, this is going to break me down. It's like, no, I'm going to get stronger from it. You'll come out of it in a much better light than you would have otherwise.
For sure. We've kind of talked a little bit beforehand about your time at AAA ball and maybe not getting the call-ups as quickly as you wanted to as kind of a benchmark of adversity in your career. But are there any couple events that stick out as you kind of reflect back at your baseball career so far, events of adversity or periods of adversity where, as you look back, you think, I've really grown as a person going through that, or I've really grown as a baseball player going through that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I first got called up in 16, and then in 17. In the minor leagues, you basically, if you're a good enough player, you play every day. And so there was a big learning experience for me, because when I went to the big leagues, the type of player I am, I'm a utility guy, role player, not an everyday player. Whereas when I was in the minor leagues, I always played every day. And so I had to learn how to embrace the role of being a role player, and not an everyday player. And it was something that I didn't handle well initially, especially, the first year when I got called up, I was, happy to be called up, and, just kind of finding my place on the teams. And then in 2017, I went back up with the Mariners, and there was a period where I didn't play for 2 weeks. And, it's totally foreign to me, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. I didn't know if I should talk to coaches. I didn't know if I should talk to the players. Nobody was, sort of giving me an idea of why I wasn't playing. And, with it being so foreign and not seeking out answers or talking about it or what I was going through, you start to internally start to create these scenarios. And that's where it can be dangerous if you're not mentally equipped to handle it, or not understanding the situation, to where you can create false narratives that can ultimately be detrimental. And so for me, it got to a point where, like, I didn't feel like I had a role. I didn't feel like I was contributing. And after I got called up, I'd been playing really well in AAA, and so my confidence was high. And I got up, and then I wasn't playing, and then all of a sudden I started to create these narratives in my head that would, sucked all that confidence I had away from me. And so when I got sent down, I was sort of lost. And so reflecting back on it, after that same year, I was all over the place, and reflecting on in the off season, sort of wondering, like you were so lost for those days. Like, I kind of I started to, like, pick up on ways that I could create value for myself even when I wasn't playing. I think this in 2019 with the Indians, like my first full year up in the big leagues, and I was, the utility guy, not playing every day. but I would create these sort of scenarios where I felt like I was adding intrinsic value to the team without playing in a game. And whether that was picking a teammate up after a tough at bat, picking up, a tip from a pitcher just by watching the game, um, you know, just little things like that where guys are asking questions about what a pitcher has or what my approach would be or what do you see from the side of my swing. Um, and they were real things where you saw a guy down after a tough at bat where if you not even mechanically offer advice, but more of like, hey, that guy threw good pitches, like there's nothing you're gonna do, like he's gonna throw it here, you're gonna hit it next at bat. If it gives him an ounce of a lift going into his next at bat and takes away some of that insecurity he had from the previous at bat, and he can have more success to get a big hit to win a game. Like those are the kind of things I hung my hat on. And there were times where I would get a start because a guy was struggling. And so I would tell myself, hey, just have good at bats, make the plays on defense. This guy's going to get a mental day off to kind of refocus. He's one of our best players. If I give him a day off and he comes up and has a week where he tears a cover off the ball, I'm going to tag along to his success because by me giving him the day off, I help the team get better. And so by creating those scenarios in my head that, it didn't show up on my baseball card. I didn't hit, say you hit 2 home runs in a game, like they didn't show up on my baseball card, but because I was able to give him a mental break and, bridge the gap between him, having a bad game to getting back on track, it helped me create a role for myself where I felt like even if I wasn't playing every day, I was still creating value for the team and helping, my teammates get better and have success and help our team win games. And so I think I ended up having success for myself in that role because I was taking pressure off myself to have to get a hit. Whereas when I first got to the big leagues, I felt like if I don't get a hit, I'm going to get sent down, or if I don't have success, I'm going to get sent down. But because I was able to take pressure off myself, being like my teammates being around me, I think, you kind of, you surround yourself with positive people, it'll, rub off on other people. You want to be around people in the game that are positive because there's so much failure in baseball. And so by having this mindset, I think it took pressure off me, and then I ultimately had success. And so when, it takes pressure off the guy you're giving a break if you help bridge the gaps where they see you do it and now they can go back and do it again too. And so that was something I think from 2017, not playing every day, where I struggled with it, didn't want to talk to anybody, felt like I was just kind of an outcast, not a part of the team, to whereas all of a sudden I'm still not playing every day, but I'm still contributing in different ways to help myself sort of get through the sometimes kind of, I guess, monotony of not playing.
Right. This mental growth that you just described there, I mean, A, was a beautiful description of it, and B, I think so important for athletes to understand to embrace your role and the intrinsic contribution that you may have provided to the teams and players in similar positions and players in all around sports, how effective it is. But going through this mental transition and like how you said, embracing, not necessarily playing every day, but contributing in the ways that you can. Was this something that you were able to do kind of on your own, like a self-initiative to kind of drag yourself out of this mental block you were in, as you described in 2017? Or was it with the help of like sports psychologists, mental coaches, friends, families, teammates, role models, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of everything. Like I'm typically, I'm definitely stubborn. I want to sort of learn things for myself or go through it as long and drawn out as that sometimes makes it. Whereas, there was in that off season of 2017, I lived in Nashville, and a guy that I really looked up to in my career because we were similar as far as utility was Ben Zobrist, and I got to spend a lot of that off season hitting with him. And and sort of just watching how he approaches, the daily off season and picking his brain about, what it was like for him, because he had always kind of played every day, but he would play a different position, and how he dealt with, showing up and not necessarily knowing what position he's going to play that day, and his perspective and his mindset, I think helped me a lot of, um, learning how he dealt with it. And then, just getting to be around him and practice with him and notice like, hey, we're not that much different. Like, um, we're, the same people, just super open about talking about anything. And I think that helped me kind of gain perspective and help to kind of reflect back on some of those experiences that I had, and helped me to learn from them by asking those types of questions. And then, you never really know how it's going to play out until you put that process into place. And so the next year I spent basically the whole year in AAA. Whereas, obviously I thought I could have contributed in the big leagues, but, you're dealt another, blow, and it's either you can pout and be upset about it, or you can, make the most of it. And I think I made the most of it. And, I think the way I played in 2018 caught the attention of the Indians. Fast forward to 2019, and I'm given the opportunity to play, and understanding like how important it is to embrace the role you are. It's like, do I want to play every day? Yeah, I do. But that's not my role for this team. So if I pout and, I'm bitter towards the guy playing ahead of me, like, does that help our team? No, it doesn't. Like, the thing I can do is make those guys better when my opportunity comes, try and make the most of it and embrace the role I'm in now. If that changes, if somebody gets hurt or whatever, we'll deal with it as it comes. And so I think, talking to Ben was huge for me, spending the time with him. And then, through talking to him, because he had been open to talking to, some of the performance coaches and, the psychologists and stuff like that, realizing like, hey, this guy, he's not crazy. Like this is actually a very normal, very, what's the right word, accepted thing to do, like almost encouraged to do it because it is going to help you and it's for your own good. Whereas like, for a long time I saw it as something as like, I didn't want to admit I was struggling with something, and I felt like if I was talking to somebody, there was something wrong. And so kind of getting over that hurdle, whereas like I embraced it and, would reach out to our mental performance people and have conversations and realizing like, wow, I actually really enjoy the way, you can reframe things to turn it into positives and create this narrative in your head that's going to help you have success.
I think as well, one of the most important lessons I'm thinking about for other athletes to grab from the story that you're describing here is the contributions to your team, the intangibles that you described. Could be leadership, giving guys a day off, those clutch moments where you come into play. They may not necessarily show up on the stat sheet as that. They're not like the sexy stats of baseball. But I think their importance to the team is known within the clubhouse. And for some kids, I think if they're in a similar situation, they can get depressed, anxious, whatever it may be, because they're not getting the stats, and the stats where everybody talks about. But I think if you're in it for the stats and you're in it for the fame and the recognition, you're not in it for the right reasons. If you know you're contributing to the team and the team knows you're contributing to the team and you're having fun with it, I think that's all that should matter. And that's, I think, one of the integral pieces of an athlete succeeding.
Well, and if you can take away, the temptation to chase stats, and focus on something else, inevitably the stats will come. And that's right. What's hard for athletes to understand, because, and like, in the minor leagues, and we heard it all the time, like, trust the process. It's almost so much that you start to resent the phrase. And until you understand what it means for you as an individual, it's hard to trust the process because, in the minor leagues, you see guys with numbers go to the next level. And so until you realize those numbers weren't achieved through results only, like there was a reason those numbers came. And, the best players, like they're not worried about their numbers. Like they know that if they do what they need to do, if they go through the routine and handle the process, the numbers will come. And that's what separates people that have success and not have success. You can definitely get results, but if you're chasing results, eventually the results won't come, and then what happens? Things break down, you start to overthink things, and the spirals go even deeper. And so that's the big thing as athletes, and it's definitely something that I had to learn how to do. I would stop looking, because in any part of the stadium, at any point, if you're batting, you can find your average and numbers somewhere.
Yeah.
So I remember there was a stretch. I think I went like 0 for 34 in double A, one stretch. The worst, I mean, it's pretty rare to not get a hit in 34 bats. I mean, you break a bat, you dink one somewhere, you usually get a hit before 34 bats. So it was one of those experiences for me where it's like the most miserable thing I'm going through at the time. And like there were points where, and I wasn't like throwing things, I wasn't getting upset, to the point where my manager was like, hey, now might be a good time to throw something. Like it's totally justified what you're going through. Like I don't, it's, but like understanding that I'll never go through a stretch that bad again in my life, I think helped me deal with it in the end. Because like if I can go through this and I'm still playing baseball and I'm able to have success on the other end, like it's not going to be any worse than this. And so unfortunately you have to go through something where obviously like everyone on your team knows you haven't had a hit for 2 weeks, and they're like trying to pat you on the back and give you little things, but like nothing they can say or do can really help you. It's something you have to go through and grow from yourself in order to really come out on the other side. And that's the hardest thing for athletes to learn, is that stats matter, but the process matters infinitely more in order to have sustainable success.
It's tough. I think it's tough, especially in baseball, because it's such a stat driven or analytic driven league. I mean, you can find stats on pretty much anything or any scenario, pitcher versus batter, whatever it is, pitcher in the stadium, batter in the stadium. But it kind of reminded me of how you were saying there, like when you don't chase the stats, that's when it comes. It's like the saying, like when you don't chase to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, that's when you get one. It's like when you become so focused on something, when it's such a mental process, almost like too much focus is a bad thing. You have to kind of find that equilibrium where you're able to, I guess, optimally work on the things you want to work on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think especially in baseball now, like you mentioned analytics, and it's only, becoming more analytically driven, and which makes it harder in someone like my position, because, analytically I wouldn't be, I'm not a exciting player. And so you create like, like you said, there's so much failure in baseball. Say you have 4 at-bats in the game. You get no hits, but I'll start to like kind of honing in the strike zones. Whereas like if I swing at the pitch I wanted to swing at and I get out, I consider that a win. Like I looked for my pitch, I got it. I just missed it. And so like you have to try and find these small little ways to have positive outcomes, because inevitably in baseball you're going to have negative results more time than you're not. I mean, you're out 7 out of 10 times. That's like very successful in baseball. And so those 7 times that you get out, is there a way to create a positive result from it that can help you for your next at bat? So even though you might get out, did you not chase a really tough 2-strike pitch? Did you, is his best pitch this, and you were able to lay off it? Were you in a hitter's count and you got the right pitch to hit and just didn't get it? Or, the most frustrating thing in baseball is when you do everything right and you still get out. So you hit the ball right on the screws and out the center fielder, and you'll see young guys get really frustrated, because it is really frustrating. Like I don't discount that. But you'll watch some of the veterans, the best hitters, line out. They're not upset. They're not throwing their helmet, because they understand they did everything right and they're right where they need to be. Whereas odds are if they do that again, it's not going to get caught. And so I think you can kind of see as you watch games, kind of the maturation process of different players and how they handle the game on a day-to-day basis.
Especially in baseball, because I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but you got to imagine that the major league leader in batting average this year was probably hitting what, 370, 380, like maybe high threes.
Yeah, it's like mid threes.
Yeah, maybe mid threes, but it's like that's still only like 35 to, let's say, 40, to being generous here. 40% time you're getting success, which means 60% of the time you're not getting a hit. And I think people have that perspective. I think it's the same thing in basketball too, where you need to be on the ball 100% of the time. You got to hit every ball, but that's just not how life or sports works. It's about just making the most of the opportunities you can.
Right. And if you handle we call it the 60% as evenly as you do the 40% success, there's a reason that that gap is smaller for some.
Yeah.
Like if you take the 60% really hard, that 60% is going to turn into 80% failure and 20% success. But the reason that those numbers are so close is because the best hitters handle the failure so much better than others. Yeah, they have talent, but you know, in the big leagues, everyone has a lot of talent. Some guys definitely have more than others, but the way you handle failure definitely shows up in your results.
Last topic of discussion I wanted to touch on briefly. Obviously, the 2020 season was a season like no other. For you, from your perspective, was there a change in just your mentality of baseball? Did you kind of notice that change in terms of your approach to the mental game of baseball? Did you have to shift it at all because of the season and the things that came with it? No fans, condensed schedule, and whatnot. And if yes, how do you feel like you had it handled it? If you can give yourself kind of a grade of how mentally you handled the season.
I'll say mentally I handled the season a solid B. I think it was definitely interesting because like going into it when we first left spring training the first time and back home and talking about quarantine and still talking about schedule and still getting in 140 games and whatnot, I'm starting to think like, well, if we still have to play a lot of games in the same amount of time, like this is really going to benefit me if we have more double headers because I can play everywhere. Guys are going to need breaks because they can't play 8 games a week, and so I might get more opportunity. And then as things evolved and got drawn out, and it became a 60-game season. It's like, okay, 60-game season in 80 days or whatever it was. Like our guys play every day, and if we get the same amount of off days, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity, for me to play. So I had to try like extra hard to be a really good teammate, stay positive, because my opportunities were coming even further in between each other as they had in the past. And without fans, like you could see at the beginning of the year, we kind of got off to a sluggish start, and they had the guys not playing, not sitting in the dugout. We were sitting in the bleachers, and so that created no energy in the dugout because when you're playing, you're locked into the game. There's not a lot of like chatter or camaraderie. A lot of the guys on the bench kind of provide that during the game. With us being outside the bench, guys are saying like there's just no energy, like especially late in the game if we're losing and we're sitting in the bleachers or whatever. Guys rely on some level of fake energy. You can call it authentic, but a lot of times it's fake energy. And so there was a point where basically, as awkward as it was at the time, like we started creating fake energy. And I remember there was a game in Detroit where there was like, kind of got off to a sluggish start. And some of us had some like water bottles and other things, and we started to like drum on the coolers and drum. And we have a lot of Latin guys on our team with they love music and they love dancing. And we had Framil Reyes. He was DHing, so he's on the bench with us, and we start playing music, and he starts dancing and singing. And guys coming off the field, and they see us like having fun, whether guys were kind of like, yeah, whatever, like, I don't know about this, all of a sudden it picked up for us. And like we started playing well. Um, Unfortunately, Detroit complained to MLB about it. The next series we played them, and MLB said it was, too similar to the trash can banging, and there was some like, I don't know, they thought somehow we were relaying signs, which obviously we weren't, and they knew we weren't. They were just trying to. We had created an advantage by this, false energy little mariachi band that we created in the dugout, and so we had to, then, you know, go back to the drawing board. And so it got to the point, it's like, hey, we're going to be in the dugout. We have to create energy. And if I wasn't playing every day, it was like, man, I'm responsible for keeping guys like uplifted or, whatever. And some days, like, guys didn't need it, but you could kind of tell when, there was just no energy. We need to pick me up. If we got off to a hot start in the game and guys were feeling good, then, it is what it was. But that was what was different this year, is you kind of had to be even more of a cheerleader than you kind of did in the past.
And I think just as we wrap this up here, that's a perfect example of the impact of the mental side of sports on an athlete, because the difference between the sluggish start and then your hot streak there for the Indians, nothing, I gotta assume nothing changed drastically in terms of swing paths or throwing pitches, whatever it may be. It was just the change in the energy on the team helps you guys have more fun, decrease that anxiety, and then I mean, it's obvious then how much success the team had, and just from changing a couple of things mentally. I think that's a really important lesson for a lot of athletes to understand there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even the guys, like, yeah, there were guys that bought in, but even the guys that thought we were being silly or stupid, taking their mind away from having, to have results in the field, and they're laughing at us instead. It gives them that separation of, results and performance, although brief, that, can help their performance on the field.
Awesome, man. Mike, man, I appreciate you coming on today and sharing some knowledge on the mental side of the game. Again, I was looking forward to this from a while, reading some of your past interviews and your openness to the mental side of baseball. And I think it's such an important topic for athletes to understand and grasp and work on. So again, I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.